The previous session of our day was really looking at the extent of the needs for financial literacy of the population worldwide and in Russia, and was also discussing the kind of plans that Russia and other countries have to improve level of financial literacy. The session now will really look at something that has been discussed in the previous session, the needs for evidence in order to develop this policy, but above all, in order to develop programs and initiatives on financial literacy, and in order to make sure that these programs and initiatives are actually successful, have an impact. And for doing so, there are two kinds of tools that can be used. The first one is really at the national level. It's the kind of measurement of financial literacy across the population. This is done in order to identify national benchmark, but also to compare national benchmark to other countries' benchmark, to assess the needs of the population, to identify target groups, but also if this kind of survey is conducted on a regular basis, it also allows to track progress on financial literacy level across the population. These kind of tools generally use quantitative methodology, and I am pleased to say that Russia has already done one and is in the process of developing another one. There is a second kind of tool that are used specifically to assess the impact of a particular program, and this can be called impact evaluation. At the national level, what we, for example, recommend at the OECD is to make sure that there is a national framework which recommends the systematic evaluation of at least big financial education programs. To do this evaluation of particular provision of financial education, a range of tools can be used, from quantitative methodology to qualitative feedback and measures, but also innovative tools. Graham was speaking about big data. Well, this session will also address the big data and how it can be used in order to improve the delivery of financial education. The evaluation of these programs ideally take place at several times. Yes, please, turn the mobile off. So this evaluation can take place at several times in the life of a program. And certainly in the design step, it's really important that some evaluation is considered. But it's also important to monitor how programs are being developed. And of course, what we are mostly interested in is the impact on the short term, on the target audience, but also probably more broadly on the long term and on the society. Let me emphasize again that the provision of this evidence is really extremely important, especially as financial education is almost becoming the victim of its own success. So we really need to be able to answer to pressing questions about what is really working for what kind of population. And here, the rationale for evaluation is pretty obvious. It is important from three key perspectives. First, from an accountability perspective. All of us involved in financial education need to justify the resources that we are spending in order to develop what we believe are good financial education programs. But I would say more importantly, we need to make sure that the programs are well designed and that they are developed in the way they were expected to be developed, in terms of quality and in terms of objectivity, certainly. Second reason why it's important to do evaluation, for the relevance and the sustainability that I was mentioning just before the coffee break. And here it's really important to assess the relative efficiencies of different financial education programs on different target audiences. It's also important to enhance the impact on individuals. And here, of course, we want not only to enhance the knowledge of individuals on financial issues, we really want to develop skills which we know may be challenging. We also need this evaluation in order to be able to scale up programs, and we will hear from our panelists about this. Last but not least, evaluation program is probably also important for policy and political perspective, in order to make sure that the policy needs that have been identified at the national level are effectively met by individual programs. But we all know that evaluation is challenging. First, financial education, as we said, financial literacy, is not only about knowledge, it's also about attitudes and behavior. and capturing qualitative changes is quite difficult. We know that, for example, self-reporting has limitation, so when we will be trying to assess changes in behavior, we will need to use other kinds of tools to really assess that, the impact of program. Financial education, it's been said before, is also a long-term process. So results may only be achieved after a certain period of time, so this will also be a challenge for evaluation. In addition to that, it's quite often difficult to isolate the impact of a particular program, especially for wide financial education programs. So evaluation will need to be designed in a way so that the impact of a particular program can be really identified. And two last challenge, there is often a lack of expertise and there's cost related to evaluation. So all this challenge largely explain why so far there are limited robust evaluations that have been carried out on financial education. But as a moderator, of course, I also bring some good news, and I wouldn't have agreed to moderate the session without being able to say that there are good news. Thanks in particular to the Russian Trust Fund on Financial Literacy and Education, tools have been developed in order to allow the evaluation of programs in a very robust way. Tools that have been developed by the World Bank, by the OECD. These tools are available on our website. But in addition to that, what is really exciting for all of us is that the result of impact evaluation is now available also, showing results of financial education. So we see that evaluation is not only done for the beauty of doing evaluation and for the beauty of addressing all of the challenges that I just mentioned, but also because ultimately the results of this impact assessment really guide our future action. So I think this is extremely important, and I'm really happy to be able to moderate that session. We have three very distinguished experts on evaluation. They will all address different aspects of the tools that can be used and how they can be implemented in practice. First, Beniamino Savoninito, Project Director at CTPA Financial Capability Research Fund, will provide us with an overview of the relevance of evaluation, its purpose, and the methodology that can be used, and then stress how it can be applied concretely in countries with examples in Brazil and Uganda. Second, Menno Pradhan, who is professor in project and program evaluation for international development at the VU University in Amsterdam. Professor Pradhan is also the expert responsible for the design of the framework for the evaluation of programs in Russia. He will present us the suggested framework and how it is intended to be used and scaled up at the national level. And lastly, Anastasia Mirzoyan-McKnight, Director of Research and Operation for Africa Intermedia. She will briefly remind us of the existing evaluation methodology and spend more time on the big data that was referred to, and in particular to innovative evaluations such as semiotic, web and mobile analysis. And she will highlight this with concrete example in Africa. So each of these panelists will intervene for 25 minutes and make sure they'll respect that. And then you will, after each intervention, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. So be prepared, and of course we'll have a question and answer session at the end of the panel. Having said that, Benny, the floor is yours.